There comes a point in every man's life where silence says what words never could. When you've said all there is to say, and they still don't see you, stop. Let them wonder where you went. Let them question what changed. Let your absence speak the truth your presence never could. Because sometimes the most powerful message is the one you never send. Most men break their own hearts trying to explain themselves to people who already chose not to understand them. You know that feeling? Texting at 2 a.m. thinking if you just say it right they'll finally hear you. You tell yourself, maybe if I explain it better, maybe then they'll get it. But they don't. And the truth is they never plan to. You don't need to fight for understanding when someone's already decided your voice doesn't matter. That's how you lose yourself, not in the silence but in the noise. Chasing clarity from people who benefit from your confusion. Trying to prove your worth to people who already placed you beneath theirs. Every message you send trying to fix it? That's a piece of your power leaking out. You think you're being strong by holding on, by explaining, by staying loyal. But sometimes the real strength is in knowing when to stop. Because strength isn't yelling louder. It's not begging harder. It's not performing your pain for people who feel nothing. Strength is when everything in you wants to speak, to fix it, to reach out, and you don't. You sit with it. You breathe. You let the silence carry the weight you've been dragging. That's not avoidance. That's power. See, the world teaches you that silence means weakness. That if you don't fight back, you lost. But silence isn't losing. It's letting go of battles that aren't worth your spirit. When you stop talking, they start noticing. When you stop explaining, they start wondering. And that wondering? That's their lesson. Not yours. You're not invisible, they just chose not to look. You're not hard to love, they just weren't capable. You're not too much, they were too little. So stop shrinking to be understood. Stop chasing clarity from people committed to confusion. Let silence speak where your voice was wasted. You don't owe anyone an explanation for growing past their reach. They don't value what they never have to miss. That's the truth. You've been the one keeping the connection alive. You send the first text. You make the calls. You check in. You show up. And because you're the one doing all the work, it feels mutual. But stop. Just stop for a while and watch what happens. Silence is a mirror. It reflects who's real and who's just used to taking. The moment you stop reaching out, the silence gets loud. Not for you, for them. Because the ones who actually care will notice. They'll feel that shift. They'll wonder where your energy went. They'll come looking. But the ones who were only there for the benefits? They'll disappear like they were never there at all. No message. No check-in. Nothing. And yeah, it'll hit you. You'll sit there thinking, asterisk, so I really was the only one holding this together. Asterisk, that feeling? It's heavy. But don't run from it. That's truth. That's what freedom feels like at first. A little lonely, a little cold. But better a cold truth than a warm lie. Because it's easy to fake love when someone else is doing all the work. It's easy to pretend to care when the effort isn't yours. But silence removes the crutch. It reveals who was leaning and who was standing beside you. You don't have to accuse anyone. You don't have to call them out. You just stop. That's it. Your absence will reveal more than your presence ever could. And it's not about playing games. It's about protecting your energy. If your silence doesn't bother them, your presence never mattered. Let that sink in. Real ones feel it when you're gone. The rest? They were never really there. So stop chasing people who only show up when it's easy. Go quiet and see who comes looking. That's how you know who's real, not by what they say when you're loud, but by what they do when you're silent. There's a moment when you realize you gave too much for too little. You wrote the paragraph. You exposed your heart. You hoped they'd respond with something real. But all you got was K. Or worse, nothing. That moment? That's where your pride bleeds out. You handed them something priceless and they treated it like a burden. Every time you explain yourself to someone who doesn't care, you trade power for silence. But not their silence, yours. The silence you should have kept. The silence that says, asterisk, I know my value even if you don't. Asterisk. You think expressing everything will earn you respect. It doesn't. It often does the opposite. Desperation gets mistaken for weakness. Vulnerability, when thrown at the wrong feet, becomes ammunition. That's why dignity doesn't speak twice. When you hold your tongue, you hold your ground. You're not running, you're remembering who you are. You're choosing not to place your worth in someone else's hands. You're saying, asterisk, if you can ignore me, you can live without me. Asterisk, that's not bitterness. That's self-worth. They say communication is key. But sometimes silence locks the door. Sometimes the most powerful statement is walking away with nothing left to say. Not because you gave up, but because you finally saw the truth. They don't respond because they don't feel the loss. Not like you do. And you keep thinking if you word it better, they'll suddenly wake up. But they won't. Because people who care, really care, don't need perfect explanations. They feel you even when you're quiet. So save your breath. Your energy isn't cheap. Your peace isn't a gift to be thrown around. If someone needs a speech to see your worth, they were never worth the speech to begin with. Let your silence protect what your words couldn't. Because when you stop explaining, you start healing. And when you choose dignity over desperation, that's when everything shifts. Not for them, for you. When pain hits, the first instinct is to react. Call, text, vent, shout. You want answers, closure, justice, anything that makes it make sense. But all that noise just feeds the chaos. It doesn't calm the storm, it becomes part of it. Stillness, though? That's where the truth hides. Not in the screaming match. Not in the long message. Not in dragging others into your pain. Truth shows up when everything goes quiet. When you stop reaching, stop explaining, stop trying to fix what's already broken. That silence? It's not empty. It's honest. It's uncomfortable for a reason. It's trying to show you what you've been avoiding. You can't see clearly in the middle of a fire. But once the flames settle, you realize what's been burned and what's still worth saving. When you're silent, emotions stop controlling the wheel. You begin to notice what your heart tried to excuse. You stayed too long. You excused too much. You gave beyond reason. And for what? Silence strips away the lies you told yourself to stay comfortable. It doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you're learning not to act on every feeling. That's growth. That's maturity. That's how you stop bleeding energy into places that don't pour anything back. You think closure comes from conversations. It doesn't. It comes from clarity. And clarity is born in quiet. You don't get peace by chasing people. You get peace by letting go of what disturbs it. Every moment you stay silent when you're tempted to react is a moment you reclaim control. Not over them, over you. And that's the goal. Not to win the argument. Not to get the last word. But to walk away knowing you didn't let the chaos pull you under. Because silence isn't weakness. It's command. It's knowing you don't need noise to feel heard. You just need to listen, to yourself. You don't have to raise your voice to set a line. You don't need a long speech to make a point. All it takes is silence and consistency. That's the boundary they can't argue with. That's the response they can't twist. When someone crosses a line and you go quiet, that silence becomes a wall. Not a wall of pride, but one of principle. It says, asterisk, this is where I stop entertaining disrespect. Asterisk, no warnings. No back and forth. Just distance. See, when you react, they push back. When you explain, they debate. But when you remove yourself without noise, there's nothing left for them to fight. They're forced to face their own behavior, alone. Your silence becomes a mirror. They look into it and see themselves, unfiltered, unprotected. And for some, that's more uncomfortable than any confrontation. But that's not your problem anymore. You've stopped dancing around disrespect just to keep the peace. You're not punishing anyone. You're protecting your standards. You're drawing the line with action, not words. Because words can be ignored. Silence makes it real. Silence forces accountability. And here's the shift. You stop explaining why something hurt. You stop giving people blueprints on how to treat you. You simply stop showing up for the disrespect. They'll notice. They'll test it. But if you hold the line, they'll either rise to meet it or remove themselves. Either way, you win. Silence isn't about shutting people out. It's about shutting down access to people who can't value you. It says, asterisk, you don't get to keep hurting me just because I used to let it slide. Asterisk. And the more you use it, the more you realize, this isn't coldness. This is clarity. This isn't attitude. This is alignment. You've got nothing to prove. You've said enough. If someone needs you to spell out why you won't accept less anymore, they're not ready for the version of you that finally does. So don't speak it. Show it. Let silence set the standard. Not every ending needs a speech. Not every goodbye needs to be announced. Sometimes the most powerful exit is the one made in silence. No warnings. No explanations. Just gone. You don't always have to say asterisk, I'm done. Asterisk, you just stop showing up where you're no longer respected. No text. No call. No farewell. You walk away with your peace, not your pride, in pieces. They'll expect drama. They'll wait for the final message. But none comes. Just quiet. That silence? It speaks louder than anything you could have said. Because people remember absence more than arguments. They'll feel it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But one day they'll look around and realize the energy is different. That the call stopped. That the loyalty left. And they won't have anyone to blame but themselves. No need for revenge. No need for a breakdown. Just space. Space they can't fill. Space that used to be you. And that's the part they won't forget. The part where you chose yourself without needing their permission. Because closure isn't always mutual. Sometimes it's one-sided. Sometimes it's you accepting they won't understand, and walking away anyway. You don't beg someone to care. You don't convince them to treat you right. You don't keep repeating what they never valued. You leave. And in leaving you heal. Let them wonder. Let them question what happened. Let them sit in the silence they helped create. You're not being cold. You're being clear. You're not being harsh. You're being done. And the beauty of it? You didn't lose anything. You reclaimed everything. Your peace. Your focus. Your time. Your self-worth. They say the quiet ones are the most dangerous. Not because they're aggressive. But because once they decide they're finished, there's no noise, no warning, no return. You gave chances. You showed up. You explained. And now, you've outgrown the need to keep doing so. That's what real peace looks like. No fireworks. No drama. Just silence and freedom.